Hey guys, it's Mike here, and today I'm going to be reviewing Solo, a Star Wars story. Now, Solo is the second Star Wars spin-off movie since Disney purchased the franchise, following the same path as Rogue One. Taking place sometime before Episode 4 A New Hope, Solo tells the story of young Han Solo as he becomes the person we know by the original Star Wars movie, showing us various moments we'd only heard about or seen hinted at prior. Now, going into Solo, I had pretty much no interest in this movie. I'm a lifelong Star Wars fan who has seen all the movies a number of times. I've also seen the Clone Wars, Rebels, and even the Star Wars Holiday Special, so I'm usually down for most things Star Wars. But with Solo, I really had little interest in seeing where Han came from and how he became the Han Solo we knew in the first movie, as really I feel like his main arc began there. And most of the early reviews I saw or read were pointing towards this film potentially being really bad. However, upon seeing Solo, I don't think it's really that bad, or at least as bad as it could have been, and there are definitely some redeeming qualities for this film. However, the movie definitely isn't very good either, which I'll be discussing in this review. Now, this video will be non-spoiler, however, I'll be doing a spoiler review and discussion in a separate video, which I also recommend checking out. But with that being said, let's get into this review. Now, I'm going to start off with some of the positive things in this movie. The first one up is what many people expected, and that is that the Han Solo and Chewbacca relationship is really good. We see how Han and Chewie met for the first time in this movie, and although it may be different actors from the original two, the characters still have cool chemistry we know and love. Han makes jokes and tries to act cocky, and like usual, Chewie is there to respond in a funny way while Han translates it for us. Chewbacca himself is a lot of fun in this movie as he shows off his strength, humorous side, and even interacts with other members of his species, which we saw glimpses of in the trailer. In some ways, he reminds me of the Hulk from the Avengers in just how he stole the show at various points. Of course, another big thing would have to be Donald Glover, also known as Childish Gambino, playing the role of Lando Calrissian. And he really did a great job with this role, and very much feels like how Lando would have been as a younger man. Glover walks, sounds, and has the same sorts of mannerisms as Billy D. Williams, without it being a full-on impression of him. And he's definitely one of the best parts of the movie when he's there. Now, some parts of his character do seem like they may have been a little tweaked from how we know in the original trilogy, but his inclusion is one of the bright spots of the film. But if we're talking about characters, we have to also talk about Han Solo, the titular character in this role, and Alden Ehrenreich's performance as young Han. And to be honest, for most of the film, it doesn't really work. This isn't to say that Alden gives a bad performance, which was one of my main concerns going into the movie, but rather he gives a solid to good performance as a cocky space pilot character. However, when it comes to being Han Solo the character, you may not really buy it for much of the movie. I feel like he gets better as the film progresses and we get used to seeing him, but for the most part, the way he's portrayed, the way he speaks, and just how he's written aren't very convincing, and in some scenes, he seems more like Star-Lord from Guardians of the Galaxy than Han Solo. So this is something I can see breaking the film for many people, since it is a movie about his character. However, his performance is way better than, say, Hayden Christensen from Episode 2. Other than that, this movie definitely maintains a lot of the Star Wars atmosphere, as we go to various planets, see different species of aliens, how the Empire has been securing a strong grip over these worlds, and there's a host of references that fans will understand. And this is also a positive, I feel like, compared to a movie like The Last Jedi, where it went out of its way to undermine much of what fans enjoyed about the movies. Unlike The Last Jedi, this film is more rewarding to hardcore Star Wars fans because it pulls from a variety of sources, including the movies, Legends continuity, and even the animated series like Clone Wars and Rebels. And it has some really cool cameos along the way. In fact, the best scene in the movie is probably a cameo, which was really cool, but at the same time isn't saying much for the rest of the film. And on that note, let me get into more of the negatives here, and there's definitely a lot of them. But the first and perhaps biggest one for me has to be that this movie is largely boring. In fact, I don't think I've been as bored with a Star Wars movie since Episode 2 Attack of the Clones. The entire story of this film is basically reference after reference to things we already know, with most of them being given their own scenes. So in this scene, we find out how Han got his blaster, or met Chewbacca. Here's where he meets Lando. Here's where where he sees the Millennium Falcon, and as a result this makes the movie very predictable, and throughout most of it I knew exactly what was going to happen in each scene, either because of how the story was unfolding or how obvious it was made through dialogue or visual cues. There were some surprises to be had, but they're very few and far in between and are usually hampered by how boring and by how the numbers the rest of the film is. In many of the scenes where Han gets his iconic things or traits that he has in the original trilogy are also done in obvious or less creative ways than they really could have been. Another big problem was all the other characters, and the film barely takes any effort to develop them. For instance, we have a crew led by Tobias Beckett, who is played by Woody Harrelson. Now I love Woody Harrelson as an actor, and he's one of my favorites working today. He can give some really great comedic or serious performances. However, in this movie he feels completely wasted, as do his crew. Now they have some cool moments and get involved in some nice action sequences, but ultimately little attempt is made to make us care about Harrelson, Thandie Newton, Paul Bettany, or these other new characters. Even Emilia Clarke's character, who is heavily shown in the trailer, isn't expanded upon all that much, or given a great deal to really do. So ultimately, these feel like generic characters who could have been played by really any actor. But I wouldn't be surprised if the reshoots contributed to much of these performances and the whole film falling flat as a result. Another big problem I have to say is the L3 droid, who is Lando's droid, who I thought was incredibly annoying. Unlike a character like K2SO, L3 is just overly obnoxious in ways that just kind of detract from the scenes that she's in, and she was really one of the most annoying parts of the entire film for me, and she also brought about some elements and concepts in the Star Wars universe that I feel like really probably shouldn't have been explored to begin with, especially in relation to her and Lando. Now I really like and respect Ron Howard as a director. The man has made some great movies in the past and has been in consideration to direct a Star Wars movie for decades. In fact, he was one of Lucas's picks to direct the prequel films. However, I feel, much like there, he couldn't really make this film as good as it could have been due to what in many ways was a poor script and a production plagued with a variety of problems. And if this film ends up being universally disliked, I'm not so sure it's fair to place the blame on Howard, since he probably did the best he could, and unlike Rian Johnson, isn't actively spiting the fans or trying to be polarizing. The one thing I can say is that I was far less frustrated leaving the theater after seeing this film than I was with The Last Jedi, which left me not wanting to see more. The ending of Solo definitely left me wanting to see what comes next. That being said, I don't have any desire to see a sequel to this movie. However, I would like to see some of the other better elements expanded upon in other films in the future. I'm going to give Solo: A Star Wars Story a 5 out of 10. Now, is this the worst Star Wars movie? I don't think so. I'd probably still say that Episode 2 Attack of the Clones is the worst and probably the most boring one at that, but Solo definitely could have been better and really should have been better, but kind of was held back by many of the things happening behind the scenes. So have you seen Solo and did you like it? Let me know your thoughts down below. Make sure to check out my spoiler review and discussion because I couldn't really get into some of the things I really want to talk about at length in this review. And if you like this video and want to see more, then make sure to stick around because there's a lot more to come in the future. Make sure to subscribe to this channel and enable notifications so you could see all of my content right away when it comes out.
Yeah, and you better subscribe, enable those damn notifications.